and I realized very quickly that monks are just normal people. It's just normal people who do not so normal things, if that makes sense. But it is still normal people. They're very normal people, and some of them would be, I mean, I don't even know when they were monks. Some of them they were, but they didn't really. They just went through the routines. They did the chants, they did the rituals, but they were not really doing the things that I thought monastics were supposed to do. And then I met some monks who were just really into it, really strict and meditated every day. And some didn't really meditate, but they followed the rules. So there's all kinds of different people within the Sangha, in the monks.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing, and it's Christmas morning once again, as every day is for me. I wake up and I'm very grateful to the universe to bring these incredible beings into my life, and Mark Pettersson is no exception. Welcome to the podcast, Mark. Formerly someone walking the very basic line of a Buddhist monk.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have a conversation with you, my friend, and sort of like, have an insight into two very seemingly similar sort of perceptions, but there's some very different sort of ideas that Taoists use and Buddhists use, and it's like really strange because a lot of people are like, oh, that's the same. No, it's not. It's quite different, and I think it's really important for people to get a better insight to what it is they're gravitating to. But we'll get to that. What I'd love you to do is just share with the audience a little bit of a backstory of how you got to where we are today.
That depends on how far we should go back. But really, I think it makes more sense if you think about like me as a kid. I still remember when I was a kid and I had my family. We lived in a small village, and I kept thinking about like what am I supposed to do? What is it I'm supposed to do? And my father said, because like in general I asked that, but I think my parents didn't quite get that. They were like, okay, well you make money and you save that money and then you buy something. And if you buy it immediately, you get small stuff, right? But if you save it, you can buy something really nice. I think, wow, yeah, that makes sense, you know. So I did a lot of extra jobs when I was a kid. I loved work. I've always enjoyed working. Especially selling has been something I enjoyed, like talking to people. It's just so natural. I never thought of it as selling. It's just you talk to people and then sometimes they buy stuff and sometimes they don't, and both are fine, kind of. So I would earn money and I'd make that money into something bigger, and I'd buy a bicycle. I'd buy some kind of instrument, or I'd get something, and I kept on doing that. And it was always this feeling like inside, you know, there's never enough. There needs to be something more because it never stops. No matter how much money I made or whatever I got, I always wanted something else. And I thought, well, especially when I turned 14, 15, and I get it now. It's not about getting like an instrument. It's about getting a moped, because in Sweden you can drive a moped when you're 15. So I got a moped, and then this is it. And it was fun for a few months, and then I should get a motorcycle. I should really get a motorcycle. Can you imagine, Sun Qing? If I had a motorcycle, do you know the things I could do? I could just drive everywhere like the sunset. Women would love me, and it would be amazing if I had a motorcycle. So I worked towards that, and then eventually I got a motorcycle, and that was really fun for a while. You know, I love driving a motorcycle. I really enjoyed the freedom and just the physical sensations of being on a bike. But then I got older and wiser and realized, okay, you know what? It's not about getting a motorcycle. It's about women. You need to find your soulmate, like the perfect partner. And I was really romantic in my youth. I lived I did 1 year as an exchange student in Slidell, Louisiana, many years ago. And America is more romanticized with the idea of love than it is here. And I really bought into that. And because it suited me, like this idea of, love is something above everything else, and the way that I looked at it. And I thought, I just need to find her. If I can just find that woman, you know. And then I met her, and everything was amazing for a few months until it wasn't, because then things didn't work out. I'm like, God damn it. Okay, Well, we know now it's not. Obviously, it wasn't that love was the problem. It was that was the wrong girl. I just needed to find another girl, you know. And then after having tried that a few times, I'm kind of realizing that there's still not that sense of satisfaction. There's this uncomfortable feeling inside of me that I believe if I can only get X, Y, and Z, then that feeling will go away. There's something pushing or driving me forward. And then I realized, okay, it's not getting a motorcycle. It's not getting a perfect partner. Maybe no, maybe it's making a career. So I started into sales, and I really enjoyed sales, and then I did some other things there as well. And I made quite a lot of money for like that time. It was, I mean, I couldn't really spend that much money unless I really tried. So it was a lot of money for me. And that still didn't really work out. And I tried it with some combination, maybe like girl with the job, with the money, with the, you just have to like find the balance somehow, because balance, that's obviously good. Sounds very good. So like enough of money, and then enough of career, and enough of the partner, and then you make it together, and then you'll be fulfilled. Then you'll feel this fullness, this not needing to search for something, right? And I remember, since I used to work in sales, we had what do you call it, commission, right? When you get paid for how much you sell. So I remember when I came home, when I had a goal in my life, when I make this much money, then I'll be set. And I came home and I had made that. And I remember so clearly, I came home, I walked through the door, and I had a parrot as a pet, but I lived alone. And I came home and nothing happened. Like there was nothing there. I was at least expecting some women in bikinis like throwing confetti or something. Like I was expecting this big thing where maybe someone would call and say, Martin, yes, you did it. Awesome. But there was nothing. And it was such a weird feeling because I had strived so long for getting there. And then when I got there, nothing happened. And I mean, we're not talking movie star money, but everything is relative. And for me, that was the kind of money I thought if I just make that, then I'll be set. But then as soon as that happened, I wanted something else. I wanted to have more. I wanted something. I didn't even know what I wanted, but I realized very quickly, like, okay, wait, this is not working. So I kept on going, and I actually went for I took a 2-month trip and traveled around Asia. I went to dive in the Maldives. I went to see the Chinese Wall. I traveled around. Where else did I go? Sri Lanka. I'm half Sri Lankan, by the way, so we have family there. And I went to travel there, and my parents were there. We were celebrating my father's 60th birthday. And as we were there, well, actually, before this trip, this is important also. Before this trip, my grandmother was on this trip, and she used to make these. This might seem like complete word salad, but it makes sense. It will make more sense. So she used to make these buns, and they were kind of world famous in the small village we lived because everyone knew of my grandmother and these buns. They were just, oh, they were so delicious. And she would bake them for raffles, for the churches, and for just everywhere. She'd give them away to people, and she just loved baking, you know. So before I left, I said, Grandma, can you teach me how to make those buns? And she's like, yes, of course. Just come on by and I'll do it. And we'll do it. But I was on this project. I remember every hour I earned, it was just insane amounts of money. So I said, I'm at the end of this project now. Let's do when we come back from this trip, right? We can wait. We don't need to do it now. And then we can do it. He said, yes, of course, Martin. Yeah, we'll do that. And we went away. And then she died. She just, while we were in Sri Lanka, we were out traveling with our friends, and we got a call. And it was actually the first time I popped into what I call non-centric experience or non-dual experience. And they called the hotel and told my mother that grandmother's dead. And my mind couldn't really grasp how this worked. It didn't get it. And I just, like this, all of the things I thought were so important. I need to make that money. I need to fight. Everything just didn't matter anything at all. The only thing I wanted was to talk to my grandmother one more time and have her explain how to make those buns. And that sounds so silly because the buns are obviously not that important, but they were my symbol of her love, of her just the way she freely gave to everyone. So for me, that's the thing I kept on clutching onto, like, okay, I need to have this. I want to have that connection with her, and I miss that. And now I've asked relatives, and no one has this recipe. Like, it doesn't exist. I've asked everyone, and I just can't find it. So that was a really big thing for me when she passed away, and I came back, and And then I really started thinking, okay, what am I doing here? I had already attained my goals of how much I wanted to make, and that didn't fix it. My grandmother passed away. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like, this just doesn't make any sense. I have this feeling inside that I know so many people have, that I need to get somewhere. I don't know where to get or what I'm supposed to get, but if I can only get there, this feeling will disappear, and I will feel. Am I supposed to feel jubilation, peace? I didn't really know at then what it was I was after. But I kept on sitting with that, and a colleague of mine at the work I was at, she said, so Martin, what do you really want? I said, I don't know. I just want to go away and become a monk or and figure this stuff out or something. I was, that's the dumbest idea I've ever had. Like, where did I get that from? So I waited 2 days before I actually went into my boss and said, okay, I quit. I really, yeah. For me, this, yeah, you have to understand. People tell me, "Oh, it's such a big decision. It's such a big." No, it was just really obvious for me. Okay, I had tried this for 29 years, and it didn't work. Who knows how to fix this? Okay, probably these monks. They have to. Okay, if someone knows, they've got to know it. So I'm just going to go and talk to them, and they'll help me figure this stuff out. It made sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so in my mind, this was not a huge thing. Well, maybe then it was a bit over romanticized, but it was very logical and really okay. I need to find the answers to this. Who knows it? They do. Sell your stuff. Just go there. It wasn't bigger than that for me. So during half a year, I sold off all my stuff. I went out partying every single weekend and just hung out with friends as much as I could. I got a new girlfriend because maybe there's a small chance that that was the one. You never know. And that obviously didn't work out, fortunately. So I left and I started traveling, and I had quite a lot of money saved up. So I actually went backpacking for 2 years before I was ordained. And when I left, I first worked as a dive guide. And then something happened that I haven't really talked about that much, but I think you're the kind of person that I should talk to about this kind of stuff because you'll get it. So I worked as a dive guide, and I was we dive in teams. So there would be a lead diver and then someone behind him. We would shift places, and someone would lie behind, and you'd have to look up like this all the time. Well, you're like this. You have to bend your head like this and look at everyone so no one's getting lost. Someone runs out of air, you have to run up and like save them so they don't drown and stuff like that. You have to constantly keep. It's like having children in daycare, kind of. Many of them, they're just like they're so unused to what they're doing, and they got into stuff they shouldn't be doing. So you had to make sure they didn't hurt themselves. And no one ever got hurt while I was there, so that was good. But what I kept doing was that I kept doing this, and eventually I got 3 herniated discs in my neck. And I didn't know what this was. I was at the boat, and all of a sudden, my whole arm just disappeared. I couldn't feel anything. My neck was. I was in so much pain. I couldn't sleep. I was like, "Oh, what is this?" So I had to fly to Manila. Got medical attention there for 3 months with the physiotherapy, and I said, like, if I would have that pain the rest of my life, I'd just kill myself. I mean, not to be. No, I don't mean that in any way to be negative, or it's just that chronic pain to that degree is so difficult to deal with. You can't keep a conversation, you can't talk, you can't walk, you can't listen, you can't even not listen, you can't sleep, you can't do anything. It's just pain, 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 and you can't focus on anything, and the mind just gets scrambled. But fortunately for me, that actually passed, and there seems to have been something else that happened with that I'll get back to later. So I finished the dive guide, and then I started traveling around, and I did stock photography for a while, and I figured out, okay, I get it now. I needed to leave Sweden. I needed to start photographing to realize that what I really supposed to do, my destiny, my soul calling, is to work as a photographer, or maybe make movies, something around that. Like I'm into that. And then I met a girl, not just any girl, Sanching. I mean, I couldn't have met this girl in Sweden because she was from England, so I had to travel to meet this girl and figure out that this. And in my mind, it was like, okay, I'm getting it now. It's all coming together. And I had started writing a book, and it was just the same as everyone else does when they get spiritual. They basically take everything they've heard and they just kind of mash that together in a ramble. I mean, I hope I could find that stuff because it would be so silly to listen to now. But I had no idea what I was talking about. I just took what I heard from everyone, and then I just spoke from my heart, and it was just random stuff. I just picked things here and there and put them together. And I obviously didn't know what I was talking about, but I was so convinced, and I was really, I get it now. I needed to leave this Sweden to go traveling to work as a photographer. That's my calling, because I couldn't figure that out in Sweden. Meet this girl, and she was obviously the one. And then now I'm gonna just go and become a monk for 2 or 3 months, and then I can go home again. Fortunately, that girl went home, and when she came back, it was like it just didn't work at all. It was like I don't even know how we could have worked to begin with, but that really, really didn't work out. Now we're good friends, and she's an incredible person. I have to point out that the problem with these relationships was not the girls; it was me. And I don't say that as in just to be kind. I really mean that I was not mature. I was not at the place where I really even understood what love was, what it was. I mean, I was so completely, yeah, I was definitely the problem. So that would never have worked. I could never have found anyone. She would have to like just lift me up and just smack me in the face. Okay, just get over yourself, and like then we can have a relationship. So they were not the problem. I just want to point that out so no one thinks that I'm putting any blame on her when I said that it didn't work. It was, yeah, we just didn't work. So she left. All of a sudden, I was standing there, and I was doing photography, and I noticed something. I all of a sudden I needed more lenses. I needed more camera gear. I needed more flashes. I needed tripods, and I needed special equipment to be able to photograph. And I had a backpack. I think was it 25 kilo. The back that what's that 50 pounds on my backpack that I was walking around with, and all of a sudden it wasn't so much of a backpacking. I was more of a traveling cinematographer or something. I had so much stuff with me, and I needed more stuff, and I wanted to sell more photos. And then I started, I've done this before, I've done this before. Maybe it isn't about the special working as a photographer. And then I really, for a while there, I felt this is not working, and didn't work out with her. And I just failed. I failed everything. And then I thought, this is a good time to become a monk, to go and ordain as a Buddhist monk. Because I set out with that as my intention. It just had this slowdown period of two years when I needed to just really, really make sure that it wasn't some girl that was hiding behind a stone somewhere that I just needed to lift to find, or figure out that no, I just needed to be really sure of that. And then I was ready to become a monastic. That's kind of how it felt when I finally went to a monk that I had gone to a meditation retreat with, and I said, "Can I become a monk?" And he's like, "Yeah." We normally in Sri Lanka you become ordained for life, so it's not something you do for a short period of time. But he wanted to make it a bit more modern, like it is in Thailand or some other countries where you can ordain for a few months. And we said, "Yeah, let's do it for half a year, and we'll see how it goes." So that's how I got to becoming a monk.
And was it like a spiritual boot camp or what?
No, I was again. I say my, if you want to call it journey, but everything was just so fortunate for me, because I should also note that I grew up in a really atheistic family. My father blamed all the world's problem not on money but on religion. He thought that the problem with the world was religion because of all the conflict it creates, and I can see his points in that. So I was never into religion per se. I was into, but at the same time, I was so curious about this stuff here. How does that work? What am I supposed to do? Where do we come from? And like all of those questions were really big with me. So I had a hard time kind of getting that together since my upbringing was like that. But it helped me in that I didn't fall into the trap of just becoming a Buddhist, because that would have been very easy. If I would have been not had that, I think what would have happened was that I met this there was Lokohandro, my monk, my they call them Lokohandros. My big monk is literally what it means, the big monk. And I'm Podhihandro Lokohandro. So I'm the small monk, and he's the big monk. That's what they name them. Then I would have sat in a temple somewhere. I would have learned to chant these beautiful chants, and I would, because I used to sing also before. So then I'd be singing these chants, and I'd learn all these Pali words, and I study, and everyone would come and say, "Oh, sadhu, 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 it's so beautiful. He left the luxury life in the West, and he came to us, and now he's living the spiritual path, the holy path. As a Buddhist, he truly understands it." And I would have been like a tourist attraction for Sri Lankans, kind of. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but really, you have to understand, for them, when a Westerner comes to Asia and leaves, we live in luxury for them. Our lives is the dream life for them. So that anyone would leave that to come and live with nothing as a monk, for them, that's kind of wow. It's very similar to how they see the Buddha, the path he did from being a prince to becoming a monastic. But I didn't really, it was quite quick there also, because I noticed all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, I've done this before. All of a sudden, I need to learn more chants. I need to be better at this language. I need to have more people become Buddhists, and we need to have bigger meditation centers. We need to help more people. And I've done this before. This resembles something I've seen before. So I think after a few months, I was sitting there like, this is not what I was after. And I realized very quickly that monks are just normal people. It's just normal people who do not so normal things, if that makes sense. But it is still normal people. They're very normal people, and some of them would be. I mean, I don't even know when they were monks. Some of them they were, but they didn't really. They just went through the routines. They did the chants, they did the rituals, but they were not really doing the things that I thought monastics were supposed to do. And then I met some monks who were just really into it, really strict and meditated every day. And some didn't really meditate, but they followed the rules. So there's all kinds of different people within in the sangha, within the monks. And I left because I want to understand this. I wanted to understand why, no matter what I did, could I never be satisfied? Why did I keep having this uncomfortable feeling inside of me that said, you need more, you need something else? And as a monastic, I saw the same thing, and I saw that with the monks amongst me. They would talk about all these scriptures and stuff, but they also wanted to have more of things, and they want not more. I mean, not bigger cars and stuff like that, but they wanted to have more people become Buddhist. They wanted to help more people, and there's still a sense of uncomfortableness. If I don't get this done, then I can't be happy. But when I do get that, then I can allow myself to be happy. So I think it was after 3 or 4 months I thought, this is not for me. This is not really why I left, you know. And I was really fortunate that I ended up in do you know Goenka Vipassana retreats? Have you heard of those?
No.
So it's basically the McDonald's of Vipassana meditation. Yeah, I no, some people are offended why I say that, but I don't mean that in a bad way at all. He's a Indian businessman who developed a kind of like a centrally governed franchise for running meditation centers, and they are amazing. He has set up this system.
McDonald's. I'm sorry, that was just
Yeah, McDonald's. You know, I studied economy before, so for me, that just means the machine metaphor, meaning you have a company that is run and has guidelines in such a way that you can take a highly unskilled employee, and put him in a place, and he follows this list. Hey, sir, do you want a large French fries or a large Coca-Cola with that? And do you want an extra sundae with that? And they ask these questions. And just by having a script like that, you can take anyone and put them at McDonald's. It's the same with these centers. There's no one doing any Dhamma talks or any talking except for him on tapes. So all tapes are done. All tapes are translated into, I don't know how many languages, and they're vetoed to make sure they say the right thing. Everything is set on a schedule so that you can take pretty much anyone and place them here and they can help out. And then they have teachers. They have teachers who have generally quite limited skills, but they know exactly what to do to handle the situations that come up. So it's like a McDonald's. You can take anyone, put them in there, and they start up these centers everywhere. They're all over the world, really big. I don't know of any other place where it's so easily accessible to go and sit for 10 days in silent retreat as the Goenka retreat. So I think from that perspective, they're absolutely incredible. I mean, really, they created a space that is easily available and affordable. It's donation based. Basically, if you don't have any money, I mean, you don't actually have to pay anything. So that's I ended up in one of those, and then I thought, wow, my mind was blown. I was, what the, whoa, this was what I was after. Like we sat, it's not a super intensive. I think they sit, I can't remember now if it's 8 or 10 hours per day. So it's 10 hours sitting per day. They don't have any walking. It's just sitting kind of. I mean, it's an intense, but not super intense. And that just opened up a whole new world for me, because the retreats I had gone to before were more, we sit a few hours and we do a little bit of this, and that's nice. But this was a very different experience when you take away all distractions and you just sit intensely for a long period of time. It just opens up other things that are different than when I'm not saying it's bad. You can have nice experiences when you just sit short, but it just brings you into a different process that is difficult to get outside of a place like this. And it's really streamlined for that.
Well, were you immersing yourself in any type of like understanding Oh, I know you were looking to the Buddhist sort of like lifestyle to find find it, give yourself a definition of what it is that you're missing, that you feel incomplete. But did you have any sort of sense of any type of meditative sort of structure before you entered that to give you a little bit more insight? Because I know personally, having done this over 30 years, if you just tell someone to be still,
Yeah,
well,
I mean, obviously
that's
that's difficult.
and
Yeah,
sit there for 10 hours. This is your entry level, as Tom Campbell would say, the entropy level is very high
yeah,
because the average person wouldn't have a clue. I mean, the idea of sitting with themselves, having been sort of like literally brainwashed with cell phones and TVs and all this kind of stuff, it's like it's considered an interesting objective or task. So, what was your entry level? Did you have any sense
yeah.
of it before?
It's McDonald's not just for the people who work there, but also for the people who attend. So it's when you get there, you have to leave your telephones. You're not allowed to bring telephones. You're not allowed to bring any kind of religious items or jewelry. You're not allowed to keep anything for taking notes.
Mhm.
It's really just give everything away. Just bring your clothes, toothpaste, and they provide the food. You don't cook. You don't do anything. Everything is just wake up in the morning. You go to a place. They do a chanting, and then they give you instructions. So the first it's a while since I went there, but I think the first 3 days they did anapanasati, which is just focusing on the breath, like the breath coming in and out, and they have some techniques for that. After that, they do Vipassana with a style that is, I call it Goenka style. I think most people do. It's basically a Vipassana like body scan where you look for the three characteristics of things that there is no self, everything is suffering, and everything is impermanent. So you look for those three things as you just scan your body up and down. And you sit and do that for the entire like 10 hours. I think the highest dropout rate was on day 2 or 3 because that's when it either became too much for people and they couldn't handle it. I also want to point out this is not a place you go to if you're mentally unstable or if you feel ill, because this is really intensive. And I've seen people just go completely nuts, take off their clothes, run around naked, screaming they're the Buddha or Jesus, jumping and naked in ponds and just hurting themselves, thinking they can fly. It's just people can, yeah. I mean, there's a part to meditation that can actually be dangerous, also because when you start taking away this sense of this is me, that can really mess with people's minds because they don't know how to handle that. And it can be very scary when I feel this is me, I am here, I'm so sure in this. And then all of a sudden that gets loosened up and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I want to hold on to that. Not this thing, but this thing I want to hold on to. And then people get very scared and it can make them do strange things and they can feel they trust. Yeah, so much stuff comes up that it can be difficult. That's why they have these every day. They have a meeting with a teacher. They ask them, "How is your meditation going?" Every one of these meditation, and Goenka was just my first one, but the more intensive places I went to after, they always had at least at the most 48 hours in between. You would talk to a teacher because they want to grab you and stop you so you don't spiral out of control and just disappear somewhere because it can happen and it does happen, and people tend to just stop taking their medicines and think they're going to cure themselves. It's just a bad idea, kind of, to go at this too hard. You have to understand that when you sit that much, it is intense. It's not. I agree. If you would just put them there, a lot of people would just go crazy. They wouldn't know what to do with what was coming up. Kind of, it'd be overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean, it in of itself, the 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 realization. I think, however long ago you were on this journey to today, you would find it. I could guarantee it would be almost impossible to find someone to sit for 5 minutes without the understanding that that's what they're there for. If they sort of turned up there with the idea, I want to like completely be free of this materialistic sort of like construct and start to realize what is the definition or the nature of reality without this pursuit of something.
mm,
And I mean, that was, I think, I could see that was a catalyst for you to understand the very nature of this incessant, obsessive sort of like need to to satisfy, and then you are never full. It's more from my perspective, when I have someone in that state, it's more we need to identify that this is a humanistic sort of like behavior. What you must start, you must finish. That's part of the programming of a human. Is I'm very analytic, I'm introspective, I'm pessimistic, I'm negative in my inherent sort of default of understanding how the world works, because it's just a survival mechanism. It's like I reproduce and I turn over another day. And so now you take these primal instincts of survival and integrate them into a world that gives you anything and everything that you can desire. If you are aware of it, then you want it, because now this mechanism of having to start and finish things, this hetero action that we speak of, if you talk to a psychologist, a therapist, a hypnotist, this is a cycle. So, the idea that I reach my hand out to shake yours in a kind way of connecting our hearts, that's how you and I would see it. In most cases, people would just do it because they're programmed that way. And that truly is a deeper understanding of how humans sort of interact. It's like, who's controlling who at this very moment? And we're going to find out by my need to control you. My need to dominate you in some way, shape, or form. And this sort of starts rippling back into hundreds of year old, ideas of things such as Darwin's theory, which is, in my opinion, some of the biggest mind poison that sort of entered human history, and it sort of ripples out into the very fabric of someone's daily perception. And people are like, well, what does that mean? It's like, have you ever heard of survival of the fittest? And they're like, yeah. Well, this came from this really, really interesting character hundreds of years ago, and had a perception of how things were supposed to be regulated in the very nature of the world. And so these three mindsets, idea of if there's too many, if human beings reproduce faster than plants, or the idea that we can't grow enough food to satisfy the overpopulation of the world, then we need to regulate that. And then, of course, the idea that we're still living with very much an idea of the structure. The three formulas that he decided to equate into what we consider our mindset of reality, even today, people value. It's like, if there's too many people, what do? War. Okay. What else? A virus. And then, of course, just death and destruction. So if the idea that you don't feed someone, they die. The idea that there's someone you don't agree with, you kill them. Or perhaps, something even greater. Let's just create something that wasn't given to us by Buddha, by Tao, by God, by whatever, and throw it into the mix and create homeostasis, because there's just too many people on the face of the earth, which I think is fundamentally just absolutely twisted and patently false. Yet people will believe that, and they'll go into that with that survival of the fittest mentality. So when you got to that point and you were like in there, and you're like, okay, this clearly is something that is nourishing me with either slowing down of a pace. I'm sitting here, I'm actually embodying this definition of stillness. You didn't really tell me, did you have any meditative practices before that, or this was literally your crash
it depends.
into?
It depends on what you mean by meditate. I went to yoga and we sat down for 5 minutes. Compared to what I did not know. No, it's not really. So no, I was a beginner. I had meditated for a few years, but we're talking about, I listened to a guided meditation, and breathe in, breathe out, and then scan your body and relax. It's not really what we're talking about now. So I was definitely a noob in meditation.
No,
for sure.
This, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, this is absolutely nothing like going down to your Pilates studio and hanging out with your favorite yogi, or whoever's your yoga teacher, or someone who's a self-proclaimed guru out
Yeah.
in your suburb somewhere. No, no, no. We're talking about true awareness of the nothingness that is all things, this present moment, and that can be drawn upon you quite quickly. I mean, just you and I appreciating the charge that we're receiving right now between us in this attunement of realization. It's like, for me, I can disappear. Time and space is not really relevant to me at all. I can literally, if I didn't have, commitments and an incredible family that I'm so grateful to the Tao every day for, I could be gone for 24 hours every day, all day. And it's like, it's a very powerful state to be in, because a lot of things can take place to alter, depending upon how you're perceiving your reality and what you're doing with your mastery, or what it is that is your goal. You
Yeah.
can change your reality any way you want it.
I, I
Um,
I think that's important what you just said, like what your goal is, because people don't think about this. People have a lot of ideas of why you're doing it and why you're supposed to, but many people never sit down and think, this is why I meditate. In the West, we meditate a lot because we want to attain more, achieve more, or produce more, or become more productive in our work and be more focused on an interview. Or those are the kind of goals that people have. I had a very clear goal that I hadn't really put into words back then because I didn't understand it. Sorry if I broke you. If you had something more you wanted to talk on that, you were talking about something. I just stopped you.
well, no, I mean, it really is. It's kind of like, and it's not something, just from my own journey. You sort of, you have an entry level that may take you a little time to adjust. I personally had a very similar background. I came from nothing that was related to any sort of belief system other than my own believing in myself. And I was heavily into bodybuilding and powerlifting, and very much
Strong man.
destroying things with my hands. And so
Yeah.
I moved right into this whole different state. And I guess maybe it was the at face value realization that, I'm just going to accept whatever is handed to me and realize it as truth. And of course, if we go down this route and determine, your past lives, and go into all this sort of like higher, consciousness, we can validate many reasons how we get to a certain point. But, I mean, personally, I had no idea what meditation was when I meditated for the first time, but it was very clear, with direction, even though I was in a lot of physical pain, very similar, like you had physical pain, you wanted
Yeah.
to move out of it. And so when I was sitting in this so-called lotus position at over 300 pounds, like a gorilla, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
No.
And so I was in
And
this.
it's irrelevant. People are so obsessed with the lotus position. It makes no difference. You don't need to sit in the lotus position. I don't know where we got that from, but people are really obsessed with it here.
Well, in theory, if you look at the actual mechanics of it, it would be related to some form of like, lines of, sacred geometry is a definition of perhaps what you would call the triangle, the high point of, the entry to the ether in relation to that sense. Because when you start drawing out those lines, you will notice a higher frequency just in that state. But I mean, generally speaking, I always tell people, when it comes to internal alchemy like mastery, it's not the frame of the car you need to be concerned about, it's the engine. And
Yeah.
the engine is acquired from, just as
Something
Martin and I
else.
are speaking about, and it's from consciousness. It doesn't come from this physicality that we're so convinced is all things. So, you entered into this with a little bit of a backstory, or a little bit more understanding of meditation. And I find that, most people, even now, when someone ends up on my doorstep, there's this hesitance and their inability to have a sense of, you know, is there more than what's running through my mind? How do I? The first question is I want to stop the rat in the wheel. And of course,
Yeah.
once you measure certain things within Taoist practices, we have a certain way to do it. But I'd be interested to hear more your deep diving into, past the threshold of a couple of days and you were like, this is nourishing my soul, I'm loving
Yeah.
stuff, this is what I want to do,
I was
and
really
where you
full of myself for that time, I have to admit. Yeah, because you are, when you have an experience like that and things came very easily for me. I never had to struggle to meditate. It just happened by itself. And the things that people are talking about and striving for happen very quickly. And I think when I had been there to the first retreat, I thought, oh, I've found it now. And I started asking people around me, like, so, have you guys been to the Goenka retreats? Like, many monks said, yes, I've been there. And it's like, oh, so do you meditate every day? Because they prescribed 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. It's like, yeah, we don't have time. We have to do the chants. We have to do the offerings. We have to do all these rituals. So we don't have time to meditate. But it's really nice. You should do that. Like, what? Like, why? I thought monks were monastics because they were supposed to meditate. Yeah, but we do the chanting. We sit before food a little bit, but very few monastics meditate this way. There are monastics who do, but the general monks you see don't do it that way because you can't really live a normal life like that. The Goenka ones are, like I said, that's 10 hours. Many of the centers I were, they would be up to 15 hours of planned, scheduled meditation per day. So you'd wake up at 3:30 in the morning and you'd sit every single day. There were no weekends. I missed Christmas. I missed my birthday. I'm not talking about like I just missed it. I forgot they were there because I was in a retreat. And what day is it today? I don't know. Oh, it was my birthday like 2 or 3 days ago. You're so into just sitting. And when you sit like that, the first thing you wake up in the morning many times would be in breath. That was the first thought I had in my mind. I just woke
Mhm.
up to an in breath. And there was not really that gasp of like I fall asleep and I'm drowsy. It's just like you awake and then you kind of observing breath and then you disappear and then you come back and it's breath. It's always awareness. So it's just difficult to, I think it's difficult to understand unless you've actually done this for a while. And I used to do it in at least a month or up between 1 and 3 months at a time. You get very tired after that. It really wears on your body. You were talking about the lotus position, and I saw thousands of people. I never saw a single person sit through 3 months in a lotus position. At 15, I mean, well, you sit 1 hour, you walk 1 hour, but I never saw anyone do that. So in that kind of meditation, I think that would just be too rough on the body because you have to be extremely flexible. And maybe someone is, but it worked perfectly fine for me. The monks I met who had meditated like this 10 hours per day average for 70, 60 years, they didn't sit in lotus. They just sat normally. And I think there can be benefit to certain things. It gives you a really straight back, and it's very easy to keep your posture I can only do half lotus, but it really gives me a nice posture, but I just can't hold it. So then it would just ruin my meditation if I tried to force myself into that. But I
So
started, sorry, yeah.
I was going to say, so yeah, please go ahead. I want to get more into
The nitty
you
gritty.
yeah, you went looking for answers,
Yeah.
which any human wants the answer to something.
And I
And
solved it.
so,
I did
pardon
solve
me?
it. I did solve the problem that I had.
And I can't wait to hear how you solve the problem, because that's clearly the Buddhist lifestyle is
I,
had helped you find what it is that you were looking for.
yeah, but I didn't find what I was looking for. I just solved the problem. And this will make more sense. I mean, my approach on this is a bit different than most people who do this. You should not listen to me and think this is how Buddhists think. In a way, I think it probably is, but at the same time, it's not really. And I'll explain why. Because in Buddhism, it's a lot about the Buddha, about that the precepts are very important. And I went into this and I thought I don't remember now if it's like 235 precepts for a fully ordained bhikkhu, what they can do. And some of them are, for instance, you're not allowed to sleep on your back. You're supposed to sleep on your side because you might get an erection while you're sleeping and someone could see that. You're also supposed to lower your sexual energy by lying down. You're not allowed to stand up and pee. You're never allowed to take off you always have to wear one piece of your clothing when you take a shower, because otherwise you're no longer a bhikkhu. There's a lot of rules, and in Theravadan traditions especially, they think the rules are the main thing. So people do the rules, but they don't actually do the work behind the rules. The rules for me are just a support system. They're like the car. Like, you can have a nice car, but if you don't do anything with the car, it's just standing there. Wow, that's a nice Ferrari. I like the way it looks, the shapes. Engine sounds amazing, but we never really take it for a drive. We just stand there with it. And that's the feeling I got a lot about what people use these ancient practices for. They're so in love with the idea of Buddhism, but they don't actually follow through and actually practice with it, because taking that car out for a spin, that's rough, that's difficult. Sitting down and observing what comes up when you sit this much, that's quite, it's not relaxing. Is I mean, people thought, oh, you're just sitting there, you're being blissful. No, this was the most difficult thing I have ever done in my entire life. I have never worked so hard as I did when I sat and meditate like this. The amount of absolute torment sometimes I went through, and bliss and wonderful feelings. But the stuff that came up is just so raw, and it is so in your face, and there's nowhere to hide. And that can really, yeah, that's why they don't allow people to go there unless they're actually, you have some kind of mental stability. You're not really supposed to meditate like that. It's not good for you even. It can break
Well,
people.
well, did they have a? Did you, through your progression in this lifestyle, do they have a system to help you move through the experience, or you're just supposed to be the observer of all this stuff? And if you suffer, I mean, that's part of the journey. Just keep on
Mm.
suffering, but without, having a way to amplify the experience, or to discern, affirm what it is you're experiencing? Or was it just sort of like sit and be still, and once the punishment is over with your mental state, you will find complete nirvana?
So in Buddhism, you observe three things. It's the impermanence of things. It's the idea that there's dukkha, or suffering, in everything, and that dukkha, suffering, and that there's no identity in anything. So what
Mm.
you're supposed to observe in this is that it comes and it goes. It doesn't. It does. It's not. We get into these dark nights of the souls, and if he's like, oh my God, life is just ruined. I'm never gonna be myself again. It's just gonna be like this bad. No, it comes and it goes. Like, you see that a few times, and like, okay, it's not so bad. I know I'm gonna get through this. Then you also look for identity in this. That's something that's a bit unclear maybe sometimes, but it makes sense when you've done it for a while. And that there's like suffering in all experiences, even nice experiences. And this is, yeah, I'll get into more like how I progressed through this, because I was there. I did that. And in Theravadan Buddhism, they have these, I don't know if you heard of Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahant. That's like the four stages of enlightenment in Theravadan Buddhism.
Mm.
In this tradition that I was in, I actually didn't practice with Goenka. I practiced with something called Mahasi.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've heard. It's a Burmese tradition. They're like, they do a noting system. So you note, you say basically like itching, 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 breath, 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 and then there's pain. You just note whatever sensation you're having, and it's a way to direct the mind to just be aware of that. And you also helps you from not disappearing away in your thoughts. It's a great way to build awareness of what's happening. So I practice in that system, and they have a very clear jnanas. It's called the path. You can really see how you progress through certain things. And after you complete the first cycle, then you become a sotapanna. You are stream entry, they call it. You're part of the stream of this cycling going over. And that happened to me. I barely remember, but maybe like a few months later, I was with a famous meditation teacher in Sri Lanka. And I remember I was sitting like this, and I was sitting, and then I had, this would be to end of the cycle where everything is equanimous. Equanimity is it's what that jnana is known as. And you just said everything is calm. There's not this need to, sometimes you feel I'm so powerful. I feel so much power and energy in my meditation. And here it's, everything just is. I don't need to do anything. It's fine, the world as it is. I don't need to change it. It's okay. And there's just acceptance. And I was sitting, and all of a sudden it just went boom, and I heard this intense rumbling. I felt, oh, now I'm gonna die. And it felt like I had energy just completely blowing my fuses. My head tilted back, and I started shaking like this in my eyes. I remember, like, what the heck? They went. My eyelids started going like this, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna die. It really felt, and it was completely calm, but it felt like I'm gonna die. And this heat coming off me was absolutely insane. And I just sat there and shook. I have no idea how long this lasted. It could have been 1 minute or 10 minutes, or yeah, I just don't know. And after that, I felt like I had a headache, and I felt this weird, it was as if though everything just had, if I was looking like this, then all of a sudden it was just tilted just a little bit, just like, it's almost like a new perspective, but not as drastical as people think. Later, I'll remind me of this, and I'll explain what the change is, because there's physical changes to how you perceive the world that comes from this, that are maybe less drastical than people think, but much more impactful than they might think that would be. So I had this experience. I went through it, and then I was like, "Wow, I've reached the first stage. This is amazing. I am now an enlightened being. Like I've done this." And I had all these ideas, and yeah, I know it sounded really great. And according to Theravada Buddhism, then there are certain, you can't kill anything. You have all these ideas of how you, and like, is that really true? And then I killed a fly. And I was just able to kill a fly. So what does this mean? Does this mean I'm not enlightened, or does it mean that maybe that's just things they attributes that they attributed to people who had gotten there? What is this? I mean, I didn't feel any need to kill anything by intention, but I could still do those things. So you're supposed to not. No, you could obviously not talk about this if you had reached a stage. Then you obviously wouldn't. No, it's something is very secretive within Theravada Buddhism. So I was questioning the way that this was described, and I realized especially after I reached the second stage, just like a few months later, I had completed a new cycle. I spoke to my teacher, and he said, like, "Yes, this is what it is." And then I thought, well, this is not what I'm after. Like, sure, it's nice. I have a different perspective, but I still have this feeling. Now I want to reach more stages of this enlightenment stuff, and I want to find something, but there's still something that's not right. Still something that keeps me going instead of just feeling what is it I'm after. So I kept on, and from here on, I think I would go to retreats, usually 1 to 3 months. I'd meditate. I mean, I remember I was told off by one monk. I was sick, and he asked, "How much do you meditate?" And I said, "I meditate 8 hours per day." And he's like, "If you're not serious, you should probably go away from here and go back to your home temple, because no, we put up the facilities here for you to be serious and meditate. Just because you're sick, that's not a reason to not meditate." And just so you understand the kind of, yeah, the schedule that we were working with. And that was my life for the next 5.5 years, going to centers like this. But I had some other centers I went to also, but it was really focused on just sitting a lot and see what came up. And the good thing about that can create a lot of problems. And there's actually some quite negative side effects from sitting this much. It can create a lot of ego, a lot of self. It can lead you to do what I met a lot of people who sat that much who are really good at controlling their emotions. So you talk to them, and it would be like this. You could see something come up, and they just snapped it. Like they never let anything really come up. They were so good in feeling what was coming up and just taking that away, so it never went any further. They were very neutral, very neutral. I separate between neutral and numb, but I would call that when you meditate that much and you just focus on letting go of everything, like these sensations come up, it makes you very neutral. But that was not what I was after, and I could feel that. I could feel that coming, and I think it really changed for me was, again, this is 2010. It's a long time ago. 2010. I was in a meditation center in Malaysia, and I had been meditating in Sri Lanka. I'd been to a retreat 2 or 3 months. I went to Malaysia. I was basically meditating on the plane, because it's a lot about inertia. You don't want to stop meditating. You want to keep that inertia, because as soon as you stop, you start getting other things in. But if you can really keep that momentum going, it really changes your perception in meditation. So I went to the center in Malaysia and meditated for another 2 months. And then I started having some really weird experiences. I had stuff that just lots of stuff coming in, voices and things. I disappeared, and all kinds of things happened. But then I came into something that was unexpected. I remember I was sitting, and all of a sudden I felt I can't really feel anything. I felt very numb, like not neutral, but numb, meaning that my whole body was just like this. There was something going on, but it was numb. I couldn't feel love. I couldn't feel compassion. I couldn't feel anger. I couldn't even feel fear. I was like, this is not what I wanted, but it was a bit uncomfortable. So I started pushing against that. This is not what I wanted. Like, no. I became a monastic. I became a monk because I wanted to go out. I wanted to help people. I wanted to be a good person. I would figure out this stuff. And now I'm this numb shell of nothingness, just sitting here and feeling nothing. And then this part of the story is my mother has schizophrenia, and I thought she had been in a mental hospital. I thought, I'm going to become like that. Yeah, I've gone insane. I took a wrong path somewhere on my meditation, and I effed up my mind, and I can no longer function. So they're going to have to put me in a mental hospital. Oh, and I started pushing hard against this. I went to bed the first night. I slept like an hour, and I was sweating. I was so warm. I had this like intensive just shh. but not really any emotion, just numbness. Really, like if you've been beating your arm so hard that you can't feel anything except for the numb, just random. Ugh. Second day, I walked around, I was crying, and I was like, "What have I done? I messed up my mind. I did. I don't know what I did wrong, but I did something wrong, and I broke my mind." Very common thing for people when they start sitting a lot. Just feel like you break your mind because it's not functioning the way it was before, and that can be very scary. So I went through the first day, second day, slept. Well, I'm not even sure if I slept, maybe like half an hour. And the third day, I was wrecked. I walked around and I had tears running down most of the time. I was like, what have I done? And I went to talk to the. No, actually, I did not. No, I did not, because that was just in between two periods. So the third time, I thought I was, it was lost by now. I'd gone too far. I can't get out of this. And we were sitting on a dais, and we were like, I don't know, 20 monks and 100 people watching us eat. They basically come with offering of food and they watch us eat. So I was sitting there eating and I had tears streaming down my chin. And I remember this so vividly. I sat there and I just had to hold it together. I just had to make sure that I didn't break down completely. And I'm just going to eat. And then I sat there and I can't do this. I can't fight this anymore. This is too much. And I was looking at the back of a Chinese monk with a really hairy back. And he had some warts and stuff. And I can see this image in my head. And I thought, oh, just F it. Like I give up. If I become insane and I have to stay in a mental hospital the rest of my life, okay, I don't care anymore. I can't do this anymore. And it was like that. All of a sudden, I just sat there like, wow, what just happened? I started doing like this. Wow, this is amazing. Oh, this is so enjoyable. And look at the back of that Chinese monk. The line, the way it goes, and the hairs and those little warts. Wow, that's incredible. And I just started smelling again. I started feeling things and like, what just happened? And at the time, I didn't understand it, what had happened. So I went to the head monk and I explained, I said, this happened. Like, it's okay, Bante, it's okay. Just keep on observing. It's fine. It's fine. Just, you're doing good. Just keep on observing. I was like, what are you talking about? I just became okay with going insane and being locked up in a mental hospital. I have no resistance towards this. Is something big. Like, what did I do? And what I figured out was that I had so this is when I start coming up with my own way of approaching all of this, which is why I said I'm a bit different than most people, how they view this. It goes in perfectly with everything else. It just changes it a little bit. So I had the idea that I wanted to be a loving person. I wanted to care about other people and I wanted to be a good person. And reality was this, I'm a numb shell of nothingness. I can't feel anything. The stuff happening in between here, that was the thing that was struggling, right? So reality is the way it is. And like, we can't really change that. My desire to be a good person, I mean, there's not really anything wrong with that I wanted to be a loving person. But when they didn't match, I was having this incredible distortion or tension. And if you look at Buddhism, the Buddhists say that everything is suffering. That word is called dukkha. And dukkha from before, like Hinduism and Buddhism, was the word if you had an axle on a wheel and you had sand in it and it went, that was dukkha, something not flowing smoothly the way it's supposed to flow, compared to sukha, when it just rolls without friction. And so that's when I started thinking about, wait a minute, what if the problem is not what I'm experiencing? What if the problem is not how I want reality to be, but what I'm doing here in between, like this distortion here? Because I always had the idea that if I could just change my reality, then life would be different. Or if I could just get the right set of beliefs, then life would be different. What if all of that was not really, it's not wrong, but what if that's not the whole truth? So I started thinking, okay, wait a minute. If that's true, then I started thinking about an ex-girlfriend. And I was thinking about, we had broken up, and then I realized, oh, she cheated on me. Like, when I was meditating, it just became clear, wait a minute, the things she said, obviously she cheated on me. But hadn't actually understood this until I was deep in meditation. And then I thought, okay, so the idea that you don't do that, and I was so upset with this, and I started pushing against it. No, I don't want this. Like, this is wrong. You don't behave like this. And I was pushing against that kind of behavior that's wrong. I had this distortion. And then when I looked at that, it was like I was walking around and I could just kind of hear there's no problem. It's just something she did. I don't need to feel bad about it. But I don't want to, because we don't do this. This is not how you behave, and it's not a good person. And then eventually, once I'd suffered enough by observing this, it just kind of snapped in the middle, and all the friction towards that disappeared. And I started doing that with more things. There was a good-looking guy who came in. I was like, oh, maybe I'm gay. Maybe that's why I'm away. And I looked at him, and for 2 or 3 days, I thought of every sexual encounter I could with another man. Things that most men are like, oh, I can't even think about that. But I just thought of everything I could do, and I looked at that distortion, and then it just snapped, and there was no friction thinking those thoughts, because they're just thoughts. The problems are not the thoughts. The problem is the friction I have towards those thoughts. And that's how I came up with what I call the distortion method, that I actually observe these distortion, this tension, this friction, instead of what's happening outside and how I'm wanting reality to be. So I focus on something else. And the what do you call it? Is it a litmus test? No. The indicator that's different for me than many people, and that I didn't realize was a good thing. I mean, now I see it as a good thing. It's completely ruined my life in many ways, but it's been a good thing. The dive accident I talked about, when I had 3 herniated discs in my neck, what seems to have happened was that somehow made some kind of blockage. So after I had this first path, like the stream entry or sakaragami, like I said, when I would meditate, I would go like this. My head would start here, and my whole body would go like this, and it would kind of go like vibrating down, and then it come up, and I could feel they're stuck. And I'd sit like this, and I would do that constantly. People would look at me like I'm absolutely mad or possessed. This was something that went on for years, like really years. I would just shake, and I could feel how it would, my neck would just push me like that. And had I not been meditating, I would have thought, oh, I'm possessed by a demon. Like there's something wanting to come out. Like, I love aliens, by the way, and that would definitely be a xenomorph in my back wanting to get out, because it's just, yeah, I'd never, and I would be shaking like this. And some teachers said, no, like it's, you should just let go of it. You're the one creating this. And some would say, oh, wow, I'm so jealous. You have so much energy and you have so much power, like moving around. But I would always notice that when I stopped distorting towards things, that would disappear. There was no friction, nothing coming up, because this thing coming up, when that disappeared, then all of a sudden something opened up that was just spaciousness, just silence, just emptiness. And when that happened, it was exactly the way it was when I saw the back of that Chinese monk, that the world in and of itself is truly remarkable. There's this sparkliness. There's, when you don't, so the distortion is not just about big things. We have it towards, we know this is a microphone. I know it's an expensive microphone. I know this would feel like that. But when you take away the knowing, or not knowledge, but the feeling towards that, then you see it just like my 18-month-old son, 18 months old son sees it. He just sees something there, he just sees patterns. He just sees something, and that's interesting. He'll touch it like, ooh, that's interesting. We don't do that. We're like, I know this is metal. I know this is casted. I know there's some kind of spray. So I have a relationship, but he sees it without that. And that's just kind of what started coming up when I didn't distort towards the world, but actually experience it without this distorting, which is what I call non-centric, because you don't feel a centeredness. There's no one here. There's nothing kind of, if someone says something mean to you, it doesn't bounce back against everything. It's just goes through. There's no reaction. It's just things happening. And then this emptiness comes by itself. So what I do differently is that I don't focus on how reality is or how I want reality to be. I focus on just getting rid of this part in between. And when I do that, many times reality becomes the way I would want it to be, just by itself, kind of. But that's like a side effect. And I never pay any focus on that. So past life, future lives, I pay zero attention to that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying that's true. It's just a distraction for me. Because for me, the only thing that's important is this dukkha, this friction. If I would look at that and that disappears, then I am fulfilled. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to get anywhere. Life is just perfect the way it is. And it's the thing that I was looking for, was not to figure something out, that we came from this, or this is the truth. No, it's that the reason behind the looking is gone. So I don't need to find the answer to where we come from, what happened before, why are we here. Those questions for me, they don't have any like weight. They don't mean anything to me. I don't consider them even, because they're irrelevant. If I would find out we came from Brahman and he created us, or we came from God, or we came from the way the Buddha said is that it's samskaras that keep pushing your lifetime, or is the Atman. I have no way of knowing which one is true, and it doesn't matter to me because I feel completely fulfilled and content when I'm just here. And then those questions kind of just seem like distractions, and I can see how they can be useful, but in my way of practicing, they're not really necessary, if
Wow.
that makes sense.
No, it really does. I mean, we sort of have a fundamental understanding, the first baseline of your own, you know, evolution. This first starting point is to master your emotions, which sounds a little different almost to what you're doing, but it's being
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
identify between, you know, Wu Ji, Tao, and some of your personality, your life experiences that are still that very soundtrack. And so for a Taoist, it's not about um, being, you know, absent with this personality. It's being able to realize that when you start, you know, resonating at the higher frequency that is Tao, all things, this type of personality starts to become almost, it does, it becomes dissolved. So when you are in a state where you're like, okay, I want to, you know, I'm in the present moment, which is nothing, which is absolutely nothing, then manifestation, what we call magic and healing, is instant. And so there's a little bit more the pursuit of this conscious agent that you are all things, and the idea of stretching this physical flesh out for a longer period of time within this incarnation is a sort of a place where Taoists tend to walk that path. So internal alchemy, understanding how to cultivate that, how to saturate the physical flesh so that you can maximize your experience, your ability to acquire this ascension is far more important. Like I always remind people are like, well, you know, Buddhism and Taoism are the same throw, and I'm like, whoa, no. They're so different. In basis, people tend to talk about, you know, I like to share with a general Buddhist realization is Buddhism is like a pile of dirt covered in diamonds, and the Buddhists will take off another diamond looking for some more dirt to finally, you know, it's all about the pain and suffering, as you
yeah.
just said earlier. It's like, how much pain and suffering can we get rid of so that we can just be nothing? And whereas a Taoist will look at life like a pile of diamonds covered in dirt. You just take
Yeah.
off some more dirt, and boom, it's good to be me. And
And
so,
that's I agree with that completely. It really is that this world is it. It's not that there's something else you need to get to. I really and that sorry, I'll
yeah,
continue and the progression of the story and what I came to after. Uh finish what you
yeah.
were saying.
Yeah, no, and I mean, and so it's very interesting to me that you're sort of your the goal of your own cultivation is to sit quietly, and you know, there's three things: observe them. Eventually, you're going to get there. Might take you a lifetime, but if you do this stuff, you're going to acquire this stillness, as we call the Wu Ji, the
Yeah.
stillness. Whereas, you know, within Taoism, we have, you know, hundreds of alchemical like rituals to cultivate internal energy and be able to transmute it however we want in the form of, as you would say, when you get rid of this dukkha, all of a sudden things become effortless, and some people might call it synchronicity, serendipity. Things are just sort of, you know, one thing blends into another. It doesn't become something that you have to even put effort to. Your life is just full. Your life is full, and it's all the things that you embody: love, joy, happiness. All that stuff becomes however you are, you know, whatever you're expressing. Whereas a Taoist is sort of like, okay, these are emotional states, and the higher you connect with the Tao through these stages of, you know, matter, Qi, Shen, Wuji, Dao. There's a progression, and there's normally 9 levels of acquiring this consciousness, and the highest one is to be able to channel with all things. That means you are all things, you are nothing, and all things at the same time, and that is just this present moment. And so, with that, we go deep into all different sort of layers of internal alchemy, and that's kind of like why most emperors execute the Taoist advisor first, because he's the guy with the secret sauce that can turn someone into a frog or create some energy or whatever. We don't want that. This guy's too dangerous. Off with his head. And I mean, over the history of China, this was very, even with the last reign of a megalomaniac like Mao, he killed 60 million of his own citizens. And most of the Taoists were definitely in that pot, because it was not something that he wanted anyone to have any more power than him. And the idea that you could access these states of consciousness without, just being able to understand. Well, like the manual that we have is very clear, like Ni Gong, internal power, and understanding how to build that infrastructure is sort of a baseline for a Taoist to help navigate through his or her reality, and the deeper meaning of that. And so, ultimately, Taoism is two sides of a mountain, yin and yang. And as you go across your journey, you bring it to a point to merge with all things, and you're one with everything. And so duality becomes non-duality. And of course, with that, you are all things, and you resonate with that high frequency. So a subjective version of love will turn into a universal version, which is the subjective one is the sum of your life experiences gives you the idea that love is razor blades and bunny rabbits. And as you continually resonate at this higher frequency, you embody this selflessness. The selflessness is to be always in service of others, always there's someone in need that you will be able to help acquire this ascension. And that's generally the major, even though all the alchemy is really exciting, everyone loves the sex magic, all the magic, the Harry Potter stuff, everyone gets all excited. But ultimately, whenever you leave a Taoist monastery, the Tao Te Ching is like the main directive. It's like, now take that and share that with the world, and understand that, these are different facets. The Tao Te Ching is a living scripture, and people just go around and they go, oh, I read it once. That was cool. 81 pages. Took me about 15 minutes. Had a coffee, read it. Wow. In actuality, anyone that really embodies what that message is like, basically, it's every verse is another facet of a diamond. And that consciousness is constantly that. It's never just one viewpoint or one perception. And the more and more you realize that you accept and allow all things, then all of a sudden the default is your selflessness. But that's a progression, but you can acquire it. You can acquire it fairly easily, because the emotional stuff is the first stuff that we get out of the way, because fear is a catalyst.
And it's like you said, those big things, like those are the big things, the emotions and those powerful, like I said, the girl who cheated on me, am I gay? Those are the big things. But then you have the same thing towards the color red, the color blue. You have a distortion towards those colors. And I think that in my opinion, that's why it's very clear why every tradition, every therapy works when you have this idea, because basically it just, if you understand distortion, that you have that towards things, then kind of all religions, all practices make sense. The feng shui, the how you furniture. Yeah. So basically, I know very little of it, but it makes so much sense to me, because if I lie with my head against the wall and I have nothing above me, I feel threatened. There's a distortion there. Just as if though I was sitting here and there was an axe hanging above me, I'd have this feeling, because there's something threatening. By putting a headboard on top of my head and by making it so that I watch the entrance to the door, I feel less distortion. So in other words, for me, feng shui is just making it so that when you come into a room, there's not this resistance towards things. You feel safe, you feel comfortable. It makes perfect sense from my perspective, but without the that like the form. I make sense,
Well,
but I don't need to have the form to do it,
yeah,
if
you
that
know,
makes sense.
your idea of understanding how to maximize that, for us, it's very much the alchemy and the energetics. Like, energy is really all things. If you really get down to the nuts and bolts, I always tell people everything is a thought, feeling, and emotion. That's it. And just so happens
Mm.
you know, you use that as a way to decipher your reality.
Yeah.
And so when you mention feng shui, I find it quite interesting because I mean, we move objects because everything is constructed of energy. So when you sort of understand something like when you're dowsing and using your energetic mastery to find where the lines of the actual frequency of the energy is at its highest point, wherever you are, you can maximize the outcome of how you set things in a room, how you build a house, whatever. And you look at what is going on within the earth, that you can create this high frequency. And most people used to put, sacred spaces or temples on these very structures and lines of understanding. When you douse and use a Tao to determine where is the line of the highest point of energy from the Earth's transmission, and then you start building on that. And then of course you want to, if you look at an object, it still has the core energy centers,
So
regardless of whether. So if you look at it, you go, oh, it's a cup.
yeah.
I can still get you to feel the energetic aura of this cup. So everything has an energy center, as you may refer to them as chakras. We call
No,
them.
no. I actually I want to, because what you're saying is so interesting the way you say, but you have a different perspective, and it gives the same result but a different angle, kind of.
Yeah,
So you
I
talk
love it.
about yeah, you talk about energies and angles. See, the way I came up with this and really made it's just experimental. What I'm talking about now, this is not the three characteristics of how things are. This is just like how I'm starting to understand how I'm working, and because of this, I could see that when I have no distortion, when I dropped away, then I would be non-duality, and I could really feel that there's no sense of self. It's not that you become one with all; that it's that there is nothing, is you become less. People believe when you're in one with all, you're like, I'm this small thing and I'm on this big thing. The way I experience this is that I'm this thing here, and then I am nothing, which in a way could be said I am everything, but it doesn't feel like you're everything. You just, the concept of me, that it disappears, and it's not like you're a big thing. So that was just a side note, but the way that this came to me was when I was back at my relatives who also live in Sri Lanka. After retreat, I was walking by out to the balcony, and I walked and I felt, oh, I was like, what was that? Is there an evil spirit here? It's just, and I walked by and like, ugh, what the heck is this? And I could really feel my whole body would just feel this whole energetic like cramp. And like, what is that? And I walked by and I realized, oh, you know what? There was a large urn, and 5 months earlier when I had been there, 3 months, there was a wasp hive in that urn that my uncle came and took away. So when I walked by, I had a distortion, attention, danger, watch out, this is dangerous. And my whole body would do like this because I had somewhere subconsciously, energetically, however you want to call it, a distortion towards that one. Now, when I set myself down and I meditated next to this, when I looked at this, and I didn't try to take it away, what I do is I observed this tension, this distortion, and eventually disappeared, and there was no distortion towards the urn. So that disappeared. So I don't see it as energy, because energy is a interpretation. It's like what we, a form we put it in, what we believe it is, which may or may not be true, and it doesn't really matter. It just feels like energy. But what it is, I don't know. And I never go into discussions about that because it doesn't matter. Like, if it is energy, fine. If you can manipulate it, fine. But all I'm interested in is this: why do I need to move somewhere? What is this uncomfortableness? And for me, that's the distortion. And that can help with feng shui. If I'm in a room that's placed in such a way that I feel less, that's nice. But I also do it through my practice when I bring up these things and I observe them. And there is one thing that is crucial that came to me when I was in, do you know Thich Nhat Hanh? Have you heard of him? A famous Vietnamese monk, Plum
No.
Village. So
Yeah.
there's two people who are famous for bringing mindfulness to the clinical psychology, and that's John Kabat-Zinn, an American guy, and Thich Nhat Hanh. They're like the fathers of mindfulness as a practice to help people with mental issues. And he has a huge center in uh, Plum Village in France, Bergerac, southern France. Beautiful place. I was going to visit my relatives in Sweden. I mean, my family in Sweden, and I thought I want to go to a center in Europe. And I heard of this place, and it looked cute. I had no idea what it was. Completely different tradition. Completely like so different. It's absurd. So I said, "Can I come and visit you guys?" And they're like, "Yeah, fine, come. You can come here and stay the summer and stay for a few months." And I went there. And I went from sit 10 to 15 hours per day, really strict, no talking, like you couldn't talk to a woman. If I was with a woman, I had to have someone chaperoning us, like it was very strict, to a place where lay people and monastics mixed around. They sang songs and played guitars. You insane? Like you can't play. We're not allowed to listen to music as a Theravadan Buddhist monk. Here they were singing and saying, "Oh, that's nice, so nice," and they were interacting with lay people. I was like, what is this?" And I had in the beginning a lot of resistance towards that because that's not how it's supposed to be. But
Hmm.
yeah, because that was my idea. I came from you're supposed to sit, and there were a lot of
Yeah.
people there who thought, "Oh, he's a bit crazy," you know. I've heard that if you meditate that much, you, yeah, very selfish, and can be bad for you. But I was fortunate in that they were very welcoming, and it's such a nice atmosphere. Oh my goodness, I love being there. If you ever have the chance to go to Plum Village in France, take it. It's in it. The space that he built. He's dead now, but the space he built is I can't even describe it. Everyone just feels at peace there. They're not very good at sitting meditation. They sit 5 hours per week. I mean, I'd done more than before I ate lunch at the centers I went to than they do in a week. But I spent a lot of time learning how to enjoy my senses, learning to enjoy nature, learning to enjoy just being, learning to enjoy a conversation. And I noticed when I came there that I had almost constantly, I kept popping into these non dualistic states, like on and off. I'd wake up in the morning and I'm like, wow, it's just so nice to lie here. And I'd look at my blanket. I remember I would usually in the morning, I'd fold it like this and I'd just look almost like psychedelic, like how the everything, when you're in a, a state of non centricness and you're not feeling duality, everything is just beautiful. Everything is perfect. It's like it's placed by God in exactly the way it's placed right now. It's perfect. I don't need to move it. I don't need to do anything. It's just almost like going into a church and you feel this, everything is just so perfect. And that changes because in the beginning, there's a self in the background going, whoa, whoa, this is insane. Look at this. And the more that goes, then you kind of pop out of it. But I kept doing that so much more when I was in Plum Village than when I was sitting 15 hours per day. And they would talk about this as if though that was a life-changing experience. And if you were lucky, you could have that experience. I kept having that constantly on and off the whole days. And it struck me that what we did in Asia was that we were really good in sharpening the mind, making us aware of what's happening inside. I spent hours, I mean, constantly the whole day just observing what's happening, what's happening, what's happening. But we didn't do much with that. We just stayed neutral. They took that neutrality and tried to make it into something, but they hadn't really spent so much time strengthening the mind before they did that. So when I came from sitting that much to a center like this, it was just automatic for me. I didn't have to, I just walk, oh, nature. Oh, yes. And look at this. And I would look at trees. And this is one of my main signals for knowing that I'm in a state of non-centricness is that I look at the bark of a tree and it's just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen is a tree and the bark and the textures. And your awareness goes from being pointed to like you observe the whole thing. It's like it's a pattern. And I kept having all these thoughts about that at first, but then yeah, that just happened much more. And the missing ingredient was enjoyment, of feeling that this time and space right now is enjoyable, not neutral, but enjoyable, beautiful, perfect, just there and effortless. And breathing becomes easy. And that's when I started to realize, okay, wait a minute, not everything is in sitting 15 hours per day. There's more to it. And that is
Mm.
actually being in your senses, observing the reality around you.
Well, you see, yeah, I mean, the mastery of a Taoist is to take years of meditating, as you would define it, and you're able to access this state of what we call wu wei, wu ji, effortless action at any moment. That's
Yeah.
like, as you would say, non-centric, non-duality. At any second, you can stay there all day, or you can go to your personality and you can come back and stay there. And of course, that's the present moment of change, for us within alchemy, to create manifestation, magic, and healing. When I say magic, it's a variable of more detailed directives on what it is that you're achieving within this construct.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
of
but they
course,
have a similar term in Buddhism also. I
yeah,
understand what you
it's
mean.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
within the physical, it will be, what are we doing to raise the collective consciousness, this selfless act that you become embodied, you embody the selflessness. And the side effect also is, raising someone's collective consciousness by having them witness something that within their 3D reality, their personality, they would never witness something like that, like a physical healing, a
Yeah.
mental, emotional healing, something that goes beyond what they perceive as possible.
Yeah.
And by being able to get into that present moment and acquire that, shift someone's consciousness, the collective, everyone raises. That's the sole purpose of getting deep into the mastery of the alchemy, is to be able to acquire that and be able to show someone, hey, look, you are miserable. You come to us and you're like depressed, or you have a certain mental state that you're struggling with, the PTSD, whatever, and we can literally, like rubbing a something off a whiteboard in the same couple of seconds, that someone's been struggling with for 40 years is gone. And then it's like, you test it. The most valid thing is always remind people, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And that feeling is critical to your own experience of realization, because we can talk all about it. People can listen to Mark's journey, you can listen to my journey, but until they actually can apply it, it's just a conceptual. It means
Completely,
nothing.
like it
It
doesn't
means
mean
nothing.
anything.
Yeah.
And Theravada Buddhism is so focused on the knowledge. I call it intellectual pornography, because they have all these textures. No, no, I know it sounds bad, but I'm one of the problems when you drop away like all these distortion towards things is that it can be difficult because you offend people. You don't really feel always that, oh, this
Right.
might be offensive, because it's not. I'm not saying it to make them sound, oh, they're offensive. It's just that it's like pornography. You watch porn, you're like, yeah, I get something from it. People collect knowledge, and I want all this knowledge. I want to, but
Oh
no
my
one's
goodness.
actually.
I gotta listen. This is one of my favorite things that I
Yeah,
always, information gatherers.
yeah,
There were
exactly.
so many
Yes.
of them. They just want more and more. It's like one
Yeah.
more workshop, one more retreat, one more of this, one more of that. Over 30 years ago, when I was exposed to the Tao, that was it. I was just, that is the space that I need to acquire this consciousness from. I must admit, it sounds like I have a similar story to yours. I literally, when I went to that meditation part where I was distorted, trying to sit in lotus, I had this woman tell me, "Hey, look, she's a grand master. This cute little old lady, I would say at that point, and she's a grand master of qigong and nigong, and she's a fifth level, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Listen, right now she's priming me to go into a meditative state that I'm not even aware what that is. I just know it's got something to do with Hare Krishna and weird people in robes and stuff. And I don't know what that is. I pick things up, I crush them, I throw them, I do that type of stuff. But there was intuitively something there, right?
Yeah.
And so noises outside of the building, ambulances, all this kind of rubbish, all this stuff going on. And I'm thinking, I've got back pain. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. So I'm sitting there, and she goes, "Now I want you to listen to my voice and take a deep breath in, and then everything will fall away." Well, I tell you, Mark, this is my first entree. Like, if you want a hit of like crack, I got it. It was my toke. I had one toke, and her voice disappeared. And I was sitting there in complete silence. Silence. I couldn't hear anything. And I was like, oh, I'm onto something right now. This is unbelievable. And I'd never experienced anything like it in my life. And I was like, I'm
How do
addicted.
because I see that as something different. What you're talking about there is like that would be a jhana or a concentration state where you stop observing your senses. When you're in non-duality, your senses are extremely acutely aware of your reality around you, but there is no distortion towards it. It's literally like my son. I don't know if I told you this before, but was it a week ago? My son was in the bathroom and he was like, Papa, Papa, Papa.
Right, right,
And
right.
I came in and he's standing like this with a cracker. Papa, look. And he's
Yeah,
looking at my 5-year-old daughter pooping. And he's like,
yeah,
look, there's
yeah,
poop coming
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Just eating his cracker completely like, and we're like, hey, you're not supposed, there's poop, that's disgusting. Like, no, for him, he didn't have
But
that
that was a
distortion. No, it was just like, there's my sister and there's
no.
something coming out of her. Oh, this is like, what is this? He had no idea that that's wrong. He had no idea that there's like
Well, is it
disgusting.
wrong? I mean, this
No,
is
no, no, of
you
course not.
see. So no, I
It's
understand what you're
no,
saying, but for me, that entry level to be able to shut a sense off
yeah.
instantly, never before done anything before in my
Yeah, of
life.
course,
That
that's
was a
life changing. Of course. I
It
mean,
was life changing, and
yeah,
the ongoing events of that. Now, I can put my emotions in the corner of the room, tell them to sit, roll over, and play dead, and that's how I observe my reality and go straight into this present
yeah.
moment and stay there indefinitely. But
And
I
that's,
understand the non-duality aspect. That was like just like an entry level gateway drug of like, holy moly, what's possible?
yeah, and that's good you
And
say that because people otherwise think, oh, the idea is I should not experience the world. And that's why I really make a point because in Buddhism, the idea this foul body, this putrid thing is
Mhm.
bad, evil. You can't even get fully, well, you can get fully enlightened, but it's parinibbana. It's not until you die that you become fully
Right,
liberated.
right.
I don't believe
Okay,
that because when
yeah.
you're in a state of
Maybe you're a
non-distortions,
Taoist. Who knows?
the thing is, I don't even consider it. It's funny when I talk to you because I hear a lot of things like, oh yeah, I can see how from my way of observing the reality that makes sense. But I also take away a lot of the terms and you have a structure, you have a construct that you can follow, which makes it much easier. Of course,
Mm,
I believe again that this injury I have in my neck just makes me feel it. So I could right now say, like many of the non-dual people I listen to, because I started hearing non-duality and people are awake. I'm like, wow, they're
mm.
done. Like what I'm trying to do, they've done that. And I listen to them like, wait a minute. What are you talking about? You just had one experience and you experienced the world like this first shift I did
Right,
like a
yeah.
few years ago. But there's so much more. And for me, it's very clear that this path is leading towards a point where it seems like this could just flip, where it's not an effort because the more I do it, especially about a year and a half ago, I started producing videos on YouTube and I started talking to people again, having coaching students and helping people. And then my process got going because I disrobed in 2015. And in those years, I had a fiance, we had 5 miscarriages, we had 2 kids, my father died, we had a house, I had a burnout that kicked my butt seriously. And then all of a sudden, after all of that, I'm back to it's not like I wasn't doing anything. I was meditating and I was observing, but I wasn't as actively as I am now. But now, after having had that life, having a normal life, and now again, oh, you know what? Now it's so much easier because now I don't take myself so seriously. A child will make sure you don't take yourself seriously because you are not the master of anything. They decide everything. You have nothing to
Well,
say about it.
and I mean, I would say that that's attributes to my entropy level being very low
Yeah.
because
Okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
accepted everything at face value.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like a
I did
child.
not.
I always remind people, be childlike in your nature, and all things will be
Yes.
revealed.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I did that from day one.